Okay, welcome everybody to the second training session. So today we're going to take a look at how to build custom modules. So we're going to have a look at a variety of things. First of all, we'll take a look at the custom module setup. So what you can do to, or rather what you need to do to create your custom modules. Then we'll take a look at how you can create the folder structure. Now we're going to take a look at two different approaches. So one will be a theme module and one will be more on the data and UI side as well. So that you guys get a good feel for how to create all of the basics, all of the folder structures and sections that you will need to create the modules that you're looking to create. Let's move Zoom over here. Then we'll circle back around to how you can submit a module for approval, what's involved there, there's a checklist, etc. And then we will also take a look at some tips and tricks for maintaining modules that have already been submitted to the marketplace. So first things first, as promised, is the module setup. So we'll head in and create that now. So if we head into our portal, actually I'm going to move Zoom down here, apologies. So we head into our portal, and if you head into custom modules, you'll see an area for you. It will just show the modules that you've created. Obviously for me, it shows a few more because I can see multiple people's. So we're going to create a new module over here. Now, to begin with, we're just going to focus on the core fields. So that involves just the basic ones. So name, the version, description, and type, etc. So let's do TS2 custom module. I'm going to call that 2 as well, because I can't quite remember what I called it earlier. So next, we'll take a look at the version. So we'll follow a standard versioning system. So we'll start with 0.0.1 because this isn't a full release, we're just doing a demo. In the docs, we will link through to some guides on version standardization, etc. So that you all know what to put there and how to control it. So next, we can put a short description for our module. I'm just going to put a demo theme module. And we're also going to select a type. So because this is a theme module, I will select this. This just helps control how your module can be found in the marketplace. So obviously we might expand this later on, but perhaps it's more of a data module that you're looking to build. So then you obviously you'd select a module, and then yeah, integrations and code snippets also. Cool. So other than that, that's all we need for now. We'll circle back around to the others a bit later on. So in order to create my module in the CycleLife system, I just click save. And that's it. So technically we have now created the module. There's obviously nothing inside it yet. The next thing you'd want to do is create your site. So for speed, for the demo purposes, I've already created a fresh site. So if I click on, if I click on view, we'll see that it's just a blank site. So I haven't installed the demo module or anything else. It's just a clean slate to build on. The other thing to note is when you do create your module, take a note of your vanity ID. So we're going to be talking today about module name. And that's a relative field. So the module name is module underscore and then the vanity ID. Now, obviously, the vanity ID is just the ID that's specific to your module. So every time you create a new one, you'll have a new ID. So it's important to just take note of that because we'll use it later on. Okay, so I've obviously got my site, I've got my module created. So now really it comes down to building the module. If I come over to my IDE, we're going to be taking a look at, so we've got, as you'll see from the documentation we release afterwards, we've got some pre-made modules that are automatically set up for you to download and use. So the first is the theme module and the second is a data and UI module as well. So rather than you watching me type out HTML, we're going to use some of this theme demo module so that you could also follow along and follow the docs afterwards and achieve exactly the same results that we're going to be achieving here. So I've already got my IDE open. Yes, that's fine. It's an empty folder at the moment. So as you would expect, the first thing we're going to want to do is open terminal. And within that project folder, we want to connect to the site we've created. Now, we recommend using a staging site so that you don't have any other potential files sort of interfering with the module you're creating, and you're also not going to be overwriting any data on live sites, for example. So let's head into this site here. And the first thing we'll do is just connect to that site and make sure that we're working with that one. So I've hit enter there, and let's do, yeah. Okay, and paste that in. So that'll connect us to our site. There we go. And now what we can do, if you'd like to, it depends what kind of module you're building, we can pull the staging site down just so we get any files that are currently on that blank site in a bit of a folder structure. So when it comes to creating modules, there are two key high-level folders that you want to look at. One is public and one is private. So essentially, at the most basic level, anything you create within the private folder will be hidden from any users and customers. So anybody who installs your module won't be able to access the code that you put within that private folder. And the second is a public folder. So it's at the same level, and anything you put in there is accessible and can be edited and copied and viewed. So because we're creating a theme module at the moment, what we'll do is create that public folder structure, and then we'll dive into how to create the theme module. Later on, we'll come back to, or Dean will come back to the private module folder there for you as well. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create that folder structure. So within, I'll just close this off. So within our project folder at the top level, not within Marketplace Builder, we'll create our first folder, and that'll be modules. So like that. And within our modules folder, we create, so this is going to use our module name. I mentioned that earlier. So that'll be module underscore, and then the ID of the module that we're going to be using. I think it's 81. I'll just double check that. Yep. So within this is where we create those two folders, so either public or private. So we'll create our public folder now. And within here, we're going to create the main bulk of our assets and pages, etc., that sort of build out our theme. Now, as promised, we're not going to be sat coding. So if we head into the theme demo module that Dean's already put together, which you'll be able to download from the docs afterwards, we can go to modules, and you'll start seeing a similar folder structure. Now, his module vanity ID is different to mine because it's a different module, but that's fine. We can go in, and you'll see a public folder as well. Now, within here, just like if you were building on a normal site, you have two key folders. One is assets and one is views. For our theme, we're using just mostly core Bootstrap 5. So we have the core Bootstrap 5 assets, including JavaScript. And we also have some CSS. So the core Bootstrap 5 CSS along with some custom CSS as well. So to speed things up, what we can do here is open our modules folder. And we can drag and drop our, first of all, our assets folder into the public file. So we can see that that's now moved over. So the next step will be to take a look at views. This is code files, front-end files, anything with HTML really. So there are three main areas. The first is pages, which you'll all be familiar with. So we can come in here. It's just normal liquid pages that are present on the front end. The second is partials. So this is two includes, so header and a footer as well. So for anybody not familiar, I'll just quickly go over this. So the most efficient format to set up a theme and a proper website structure would be to create one header, one footer, and one template as well. So that you can include your header and footer into your template once and apply that one template to all pages. So it's the most efficient for being able to A, standardize your code, but also more easily edit it afterwards. So that's pretty much it. So yeah, within the layouts folder here, we've got that template file as well. So again, for speed, what we can do is just copy from the demo into our public folder so that it's alongside. There we go. So we'll copy all of that across, and you can see that's gone in now as well. So if we head into some of these files, you can see our page template here. pretty basic, just a wrapper around, and it includes our header and footer there. And then we have the normal pages. So we've got the about page, for example. So that is effectively the key files and folder structures that we need to create our theme. So now we could realistically, we want to be testing before we submit a module and make sure that it's working and looking as we'd like. So now what we can do is come back to terminal, and we can start deploying that to our site and making sure that it all looks okay. So deploy staging. Now you'll note that I haven't actually added on the deploy with assets flag. So I'll say yes to that. So that's because the assets flag will look for assets within the marketplace builder folder. Because we're doing a module, we don't need to do that. It will automatically deploy any files within our modules folder structure. So it'll do it automatically. Now you'll notice here, so this was on purpose, we have an error. Now the error is effectively telling me that the module name that I'm using is not correct. Now this is correct because what I've done there, if you've noticed, is copied from Dean's demo. So Dean has a working module theme demo. You'll be able to access this as well. But of course that uses his name, not ours. So what we'll do is we'll come in here and we just need to do a quick find and replace to update the name to our module name. So if we do module 66 and replace it with module 81, and then we'll just replace all. There we go. Okay. Now, some of you, while building your module, particularly if it's a larger module or a larger theme, you'll probably have sync turned on and you can gradually make iterations to your site. That's totally fine. But because we're just doing a basic theme, I don't need to do that. And I can deploy all at once. So effectively, I'm running an install of a module, but just manually at the moment. So if I deploy that again, yes, there we go. Now, just like a normal website, depending on how large your asset files are, depending how many pages you have and how big your database is. Whoops. Helps if you spell it correctly as well. Depending on how large your database is and how many code files you have, you will have a larger amount of time to wait. So just like using a normal CLI to deploy to a website. So we just recorrected those because I made a spelling error. And let's deploy that again one more time. So if we come back while that's deploying, we'll come back over to our site over here. So this is a specific site for building my module on, as I said earlier. We don't have anything else on it at the moment. So effectively, once we've deployed, we should see the module come into effect on our site. Now, one more thing to point out here is there's one file that I haven't moved over yet. So if I come back, and this is intentional, so I'll show the impact. So at the moment, we've created the template, we create the header and footer and the pages that those are applied to, which is great. So we pretty much have a full theme along with those assets there. So once this is deployed, we'll see that be successful. We'll just wait another second. I just have core, well, there's only core Bootstrap 5 here and a few CSS files, so it's pretty quick to deploy on this one. There you go, it's succeeded. If I refresh now, we actually won't see a change on the front end. Oh, we will, okay. That shouldn't have happened. It's possibly because I did one of these earlier today. But what I was going to show, which that shouldn't have had an effect, is, bear with me, if we go back out one, is if we drag over one of the setup files, is the install process JSON. We can head into that. Now, this has a line of code in here that says set homepage. So apologies for everybody watching live. Obviously, we did this earlier and it's confused things. But this file is the one that will define that homepage, that start page, so no URL. So if we hadn't set this earlier, effectively you'd have all of your modules and pages on there, and they would all show really nicely in admin, and you could preview them, but it wouldn't show on the home page. So yeah, this install process JSON is one of the setup files that you can use to automate that. So some of you might build themes that are quite substantial, and you might want it to replace that homepage, and others may want something that's perhaps an add-on. You might do an add-on to another theme, or just something that's a little bit less intrusive on sites, and then you wouldn't install this file at the same time. So as you can see, we do have our theme module installed. We have the home page, all of our assets are showing, all of the pages as well. So if you click through on links, we can see that everything is there. So it's just a fairly small example template there. So we've that's the folder structures. So next would be submitting your module for approval. Now there's effectively a checklist. Now we'll be showing this checklist in the documentation after this. Now, the first thing to do, obviously, would be to check that you have all of your assets and all of your code files in there successfully. So obviously on my test site, this is where I've created the module. It all works just fine. If you really wanted to double check, so perhaps you've been syncing and making iterative changes over a long period of time, what you may want to do is just redeploy that to another staging site. Just double check that the module files alone are being sustained. So the next thing to do, which we have actually already done, is ensure that you've used the correct module name in all of your files and folders. So obviously we've used that module 81 in our folder structure here. And I also went through and updated the demo module files to include that module name as well. So we're all correct and squared away there. Whether or not you perhaps use, you might copy some files from an existing template that you own, or you might use our demo. It's important to check that that's all in line. With the reason we block that and create an error message is if you were to perhaps do a different module number, you could end up referencing either templates or assets that are not within your module, which is obviously bad because you're not going to have the end result that you're looking for. So that's the next step, to check that that's all in place. The third thing would be to check that you haven't got the marketplace builder folder contained within your module. So we have downloaded the site, and this marketplace builder folder that usually contains all of the assets of the core site is visible. If I were to deploy this to another site as it is now, because there's not really anything within this, there are no apart from system pages, there are no pages within this marketplace builder folder. So when I deploy it to a site, you'll overwrite the marketplace builder folder and wipe the whole site and any data potentially. It depends which files you have missing. So what we're going to want to do is just delete that from our module now that we've finished creating it. So we can move that to the trash. So that's now when we look at our module folder, it is simply the module within here that we're going to be submitting. The next one is to double check that you set up your setup JSON files correctly. Because we're just looking at a theme here, we've only got the install process one, which we could see did work earlier, where you define your home page. So you just want to double check that you've got those in the correct place. So realistically now, what we're going to want to do is come on to creating a GitHub repo. Now, we won't go through this in the training today because it's a third-party platform and many of you are familiar already. But if you're not, the docs afterwards will have screenshots and steps to help you navigate that. So you'll effectively create a GitHub repository. The first thing you're going to want to do there is create a git ignore file. So that is a file within your repository that will purposely ignore certain files that you put in your project folder. So for example, we have the site config file here that contains your authorization keys for your user to connect to the site. Nobody else needs that, and it's not very secure. So that is a file that you would add to that ignore. Along with, if you're on a Mac, the .temp files and folders. And you may also want to add any other files in that you're purposely just working on locally. Once you've done all of that, you can commit it to your GitHub repository, and you're pretty much all set. There are just a couple of changes that we'd want to make there. So If we head over to SiteGlide, the process for submitting your module, so if we come back over to that, is just to fill in some of those extra fields. So I said we'd circle back around to it, and we'll do that now. So first of all, you'll probably, if you're doing the first full release of your module, update the version syntax. So you'll do a full release, first version there. Next thing you want to take a look at is, so you'll probably want to put in your path. So this is the module name. So if we do 81 here, and then of course your GitHub information. So one is the repo name and one is your account name for GitHub. So these are just text fields. You'd enter those as you'd like. Then we have the changelog field. So this is a field where typically you put in a URL. So maybe if you're an agency and you've created a module, you might have some documentation or usage or even a proper changelog of updates you've made over time. This would be where you put that link so that users can find it. Finally, you can choose whether or not your module is going to go live. So if it's just you working on it at the moment, you sort of created it, it's ready to go, but you want to test it first, you could leave this off. But if it is ready and you'd like to use it and submit it, you can turn that on. From there, we just hit save, and that's pretty much it from the SiteGlide side. Your module is now created and submitted. There's just one more or two more final things to do on the GitHub side. So the first would be to go into your repo. Now, when you create a repository on GitHub, it automatically creates a main branch and names that branch main. So for our API to be able to connect to it and ensure that it can pull from it, you'll want to update your branch name to be master. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, of course, to invite our API at siteglide.com to your repository so that it has access and can install that from your repository. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We've covered obviously creating your module, creating your site and folder structures for a theme module. We've also looked at the checklist of tidying up so that you are prepared and ready to start submitting a module, and then of course submitting that module. So as promised, next what we'll do is we'll come on to the data and UI side. So Dean will take you through an example on that side of things as well. Dean, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, I will stop sharing there.
Cool. So this is quite a recent update. Just to prefix with, this is currently only available in alpha. So don't try and invest on admin or strange things may happen. If you don't have access to alpha, just reach out to one of the support team and we can get that turned on for your entire agency. So all members in your agency will have access. So this is going to be essentially the custom UI part. So we've now opened up that you can build your own UIs within the module itself. You can tell us where that UI will be. And then we, instead of loading the normal table view that you've probably seen with web apps and modules, it will just go and load your file instead. So they can be built in any language that you feel comfortable in, really, that Platform OS can support. And it uses all the same sort of internals of a site. So it's essentially like a mini site within that module. So starting off in our sort of setup for the module in admin, only a few real differences from the one that Martin's just shown, which is that this one has a menu item. So it will appear in the left-hand side within the site. You can give that a name. It can differ from the name of the module that's shown in Marketplace, in case you need to do that. And then the custom UI path. So this is the URL that you would like the admin UI to load when they click that item in the left-hand side. So we'll show that in the code in a second. So once those two are entered, if I just install my module, I've built essentially a property, what I've called Property Explorer. So it's sort of like a way to list properties if you were building an estate agent sort of website. So whilst that's installing, I'll just flick to the code. There it is. So a few things different here from the one that Martin's just shown. We've got the public and the private folders, and they're both in use. So public has a front end layout. This module has a front end element as well. So it supports that. And then there's some code and some images around that, some JavaScript, sorry. And then the private folder contains essentially everything that we would like to show in the custom UI. So the private folder will not be visible if the user pulls the site. They can't load any of the pages or anything via GraphQL. That's a Platform OS level sort of locked away folder. So some new things here. This essentially is a completely custom table, adding data to the table, removing it. It's all custom GraphQL and schemas. There's no sort of built-in site-like functionality. So it's the other end of the spectrum completely, that you get nothing and a blank slate to play with. So I've got a table with some fields, some basic information about the property. I've also got some image manipulation on upload, something that we don't currently support directly within SiteGlide, but is a Platform OS feature. Some graph queries, so adding a property to the database, deleting one, etc. I won't go into what these do, but hopefully they're self-explanatory with the names. And then the views. So I've built a back-end and front-end element, as I said a minute ago. So we've got just a layout that handles both of them essentially. Some pages for the front end. So these will be visible on the actual website themselves under these URLs. And then this is almost like a detail view. And then this module iframe folder is the one that will load the backend within admin. So I've got this index page here, which is the URL that I entered into the module setup screen a minute ago. We've got some sort of config that has to be in every page. So this denotes that it can be loaded in admin. The authorization policy checks that the user is logged in, has an active session, and that they obviously can access the site so that they can view this information. We also have this little tag that we put on the end of every link, which matches up with this authorization policy to make sure that they can view this. If any of that's missing, you'll just see an error within the admin. So I'll flip back and just show you some of this working. As the code isn't the exciting part. So that's finished installing. There we go. We've got this Property Explorer module, and then instead of the normal table view, you'll get essentially a blank page, but there's no data in there, so that's expected. So I can then add a property. Obviously, all of this is, I mean, it's beautiful, if I do say so myself, but it's nothing like how the rest of admin looks. There's a JavaScript image uploader. So if I pick one of these, that'll go off and add that to the item. And then I can go back and view them, delete them. Obviously, you could make this look nicer. The designer in me wasn't present that day. And then on the front end, again, just something sort of thrown together to show that it's possible. We're using that image thumbnail generator here. So this one has a URL of thumbnail_house and is prefixed to be pre-size, sorry, to be 400 pixels wide. But then if you go into the detail view, we've got the full width image. So that one doesn't have thumbnail and it's 500 pixels wide. So just an example of something you can do that is a core Platform OS feature that we've not even built on top of yet, but you can obviously build that into your own modules because you've got all the flexibility of that underneath. And then just another small feature. So you tested this module and it wasn't for you because it hasn't got a good design, which is perfectly valid. You can come back into the modules area of your site. And we've got this uninstall button here. So this is currently only available on modules that we've not built that aren't in the marketplace. So, sorry. Yeah, so blog, testimonial, authors, etc. This does not work with currently. This is only ones that are visible in the marketplace, or that have been built with this new method. So I can click that. It will give you a bit of a warning. It will remove all usage that may have been generated. So obviously during creating this item, I've created a small amount of storage by uploading an image and one database item by creating that one property. So this will delete the module folder and then obviously empty those tables and remove all of that information from the site just from a one-click method. So that's something we wanted to get in for the marketplace. So obviously we hope that you'd install a few, try them out, but also have an easy way to then remove them and not have data lying around. I think that's everything on that. We'll probably get some questions at the end, but
yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Gene. So next, what we'll do is just touch on a couple of tips for maintaining existing modules. So if you've already created a module, you've submitted it to the marketplace, or even if it's public, even if it's private, it doesn't matter. We have a couple of suggestions for you to make life a bit easier. So the first being, so we touched on earlier when we were looking at the theme module, if you create your GitHub repository, you have to update your core branch. The default is main, and you'd update that to be master. So the API, our API, automatically looks in the GitHub repo for that name, so for master. Now, when somebody clicks install, it automatically takes a copy from that master branch. So if you've already created one, you've done your initial release, and you already have a module up and running, we'd highly recommend creating a second branch, be it, you could call it staging, you could call it, branch 2, whatever you would like to, and work on any updates that you're tinkering with on that branch. And then when you're sure and confident you've got a release ready, you can then merge that into your master branch to then serve as an update for your users. So the other half of that, the other tip is so how to notify users of an update to your module. So if we head over to our module here, effectively what you do is you come into the list and edit your module, and in the version field, you would then update that. So if it's a minor release, we could go 1.0.1, or perhaps you've done a really big release and it's a full release as well. Effectively, any change to this version field will automatically notify people who have your module installed that there is an update available. So, and as I'm sure you're all familiar, if you're in the admin of a site, this is new, let's give this one a go. When you're in an admin of a site, you'll see the little red notification at the top of the bar. But equally, when you come into the modules tab in site settings, they'll see that yellow update button. Okay, yeah, we don't have any updates available here. But that updating that version field is what notifies everybody that the release is ready. And as I say, it will go to that master branch. So work somewhere else and then merge into that. So that forms the couple of tips we have for maintaining your modules. Dean, did you have anything else that you'd like to mention just while we're on tips of how to sort of maintain modules?
I don't think so. We'd like to, I said I don't think so, then immediately started talking. We'd like to improve this flow in the future. So for the moment, it's sort of a bit disjointed with the rest of admin, but the idea being that if you, when you create a module and when you're updating them, it will automatically create tickets so that you can obviously keep track of what we're doing, because we're going to obviously install them and test them and read through the code to check that there's not anything malicious going on or unintentionally destructive. So we just want to make sure that flow is sort of as seamless as possible, and that you know that we're checking them, we know what status it's in, and if there's any feedback, that's easy to read. So that's something we're aware of. It's not as good as it can be at the moment. We're going to manually create a ticket, but yeah, just making that more seamless basically. Overall, this whole sort of module area is very new, hence only being alpha, and we really want some feedback on it. So we've obviously built it with the ideas of how it will work, but in use that might not be the best way. So bear with us. And yeah, we're very open to obviously improving it where there can be improvements and all the feedback. So be kind.
Absolutely. Great, thank you. Excellent. Okay, well, that pretty much wraps things up, really. So what I'm going to do is just come on to a few questions that were already submitted, and then we can open up the floor to you guys here live to ask any questions that you'd like to. So if we just dive in. Okay, so the first of the questions is from Bruce. So what does Martin's Unicorn module do? Can you give an insight into building a module with features like the support tickets module, and more specifically, how to create a message thread like in support tickets? So my Unicorn module was me testing. I did a test module, which was obviously going to become the next unicorn in tech, of a theme module. So I've used that for screenshots in the documentation, and everything will release after this training session. In terms of insights into building modules with sort of a messaging system, I think, Dean, you're probably best one to answer that one, really.
Yes, if you're looking for something along the lines of sort of how our ticketing works, if you've used that, I'd probably go down the custom route, just because then you've got more control over sort of how your tables are set up. So what would be the most likely best route would be to have two tables, one for tickets, one for comments, and then sort of link those together with like a parent-child sort of setup. So the comments would always store the ID of the ticket that they're associated with, and then within your custom GraphQL, you can obviously say only find comments where the ticket ID is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you've got that flexibility. You could only pull out certain information in certain areas. Say on the ticket list, you don't need the entire message. That can be more performant in that case. Yeah, definitely possible. Obviously, depends slightly how you want it to look and what fields you'd like, but you've got complete flexibility over
that. Awesome, thank you. Second question today from, oops, I've lost my mouse. There we go. Sorry. Second question today from DJ. So, is there a way to automate the install of a theme after purchasing on an external site? So, there are two ways we're sort of interpreting your question, DJ. So, one would be if you purchase a theme from an external site, there are sites up there who provide themes you can buy for $10 or something like that. And would you be able to automate the install of that? No, not likely, unless they have an API, or it would be custom. But the second, and probably more likely, is if you were to perhaps show themes that you have built on your own website for the SiteGlide platform, would somebody be able to purchase them there and have it automatically install through the marketplace? And the answer effectively at the moment is no, not for now. I think what you could do is link through to the marketplace, and you can have your little profile and everything for that module, and you could process the payment through your site. But effectively what you'd need to do is set up the submission form, the purchase form, and have a 24-hour sort of wait period where you can then manually install that module. I think, Dean, we're planning on adapting and adding to the API to sort of process this a bit more smoothly in future, right?
Yeah, so at the moment it's there's no monetization essentially with the modules. That's a harder part of it, so we're starting with free ones. So I think this is sort of a way around that for now if you want to get a bit ahead of the game. So yeah, for the moment, as Martin says, you can take the payment and then install them manually, which is a little clunky. An idea is sort of an intermediary, if you'd still like to sell them even when we get around to doing the monetization part, would be that we have some form of sort of receipts API. So you receive sort of the order and the payment on your website, that could be hosted anywhere. And then as long as you hit an API endpoint with the information such as the module ID, the site ID, etc., we can then validate that and install the module, or allow the user to then see that module for it to be installed. So definitely something that we're thinking about. Just it's not here today.
Fair enough. Thank you. Cool. So 2 final questions. So the first is from Alexandra. Are modules stored on the partner portal for use on all of partners' websites? So yes, it depends. So if you make the module public, then yes, it's installable by any agencies on all of their websites. However, if you kept the module private, it would only be installable on your own websites, and for you, any websites you're invited to that you could then manually install the module on. If you do it on that second option, so maybe you've agreed a sale to another agency, or maybe you've made an exception, or you just want to do a favor and you just want to install it for free. If somebody invites you to one of their websites and you install your module for them, they can't then install that module, your module, on any of their other sites, so you have full control of it. So for the moment, you've got the two options there. How are marketplace modules installed on the website? So I think we covered that earlier, but actually if not, let's just quickly dive out. So you'll have 2 areas. The first is within community, so we can come over to the marketplace. Now in here, you will see any modules that are made public to the marketplace. So we saw that field earlier when we were in our module over here. So if we make this live, your module, once approved, will be visible to anybody within the marketplace. Obviously, as we're site-wide, we see some that are not yet made public. The second option would be to head into, as normal, the modules tab on site settings, and then you can click install for your own modules or modules you have access to from that location as well. And how easy is it to create a module for a non-coding genius? So hopefully we've touched on that today. Effectively, it's quite easy to create a module. It really comes down to what you're trying to create. So you can create quite a basic theme module fairly quickly and fairly easily. When I was doing testing for the documentation to do screenshots and make sure the flow is correct, my module probably took about half an hour to make for a basic theme module. But it really comes down to what you're going to do. Obviously, if you do something that's more complex, it will take longer. The same can be said for the data and the custom UI side that Dean showed off. So, you know, if you're going to go crazy, you can create anything you want. It just comes down to whether or not you're able to create it and how difficult it is to do that. So hopefully we've kind of shown that, you know, it is now possible to create any module you want. We're not in your way. It just comes down to what you are wanting to and are capable of creating. And finally, Gary asks, do I need HTML crystal programming skills to build these modules? So first of all, yes, if you're going to create a module, any language that you use, obviously, you're going to need to know how to do. And we haven't got like a self-build point and click module builder. It really is up to you guys to create anything you want, be that themes or just data. You don't have to do a custom UI or custom UI as well. And can I build modules, module pages which are password protected so that selected users only can access these specific pages whilst all other pages are public? So front end, yes, absolutely. So you could integrate your module with secure zones and you can have those front end pages locked. So perhaps you wanted to create some kind of portal module. Of course, you can then control which users in the CRM of the site have access to which zones. But equally, I'm pretty sure, Dean, I'm correct in saying that you can do the same thing with the custom UI, so the back-end admin side of modules as well. Yeah,
so you could write your own authorization policies, which are essentially sort of the tech that Secure Zone sits on top of, provided by Platform OS. So you could say the user has to be within a certain level. They have to have a certain something on their profile, or they can only be called Martin, or etc. You get complete freedom over that. So yeah, you could do that as well. Obviously, you'd have to provide your own sort of like error or 401 type page if the user wasn't authenticated. But again, that's within the realm of what you can do.
Okay, excellent. Cheers. And finally, we have a current website which is built on site web backend. Does this have any implications in building our own modules? So the short answer is no. It doesn't have an implication on that. I think we highly recommend, if you're going to build a module, do it on a staging site, a fresh, empty site, where you're not going to affect anything that you're either working on in staging or any live sites. So stay clear of that and do it on a fresh site so that you can have full access and play with it without risk. But otherwise, once you've created the module that you want, be it theme or data or UI or a mix of all of them, submit your module, and then once it's approved, you can install that on any of the sites that you would like to. You might have to think about, so if you have some pages, perhaps, or yeah, probably more on pages and templates, you might have some that use names or paths that might clash with one of your existing sites. So as Dean touched on earlier, the best way to get around this is when you're building your module, you include the module name in your template path, for example, or your asset path. So then it makes it truly unique, and it doesn't matter which site you install the modules on. So that's a good suggestion. Alrighty. So just finally, before we sort of round things up, I just wanted to highlight again this training session, the developer forum group. So you'll notice we've added in a modules topic this time as well. So if we head over to the forum, if when you're building modules or you're getting started, of course, after this training session this week, we will sort of refine this into a new Academy page. But if while you're following through that, you think, oh, this doesn't really make sense, or it does, and you've created something that you'd like to share and it looks cool, head over to the developer group. As I say, yeah, share successes, share questions or issues you're struggling with. And when you create your forum post comments in this developer area, you can include those topics. So you can see we've now added modules. So you can specifically target that if you'd like to when you're building modules. Alrighty, so really over to you all who are with us live today. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Dean for assisting, and we will see you all next time. Cheers, bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.